This presentation covers the basics of MLA 8th edition that was published and produced in 2016. For different types of guidelines on citation styles not covered in this presentation, you will want to go to our online handbook, which we're using, the Purdue OWL. Why do we have to do all of this? One of the main differences between academic writing and everyday writing is that academic writing, you need to properly cite the sources of any information that you use. Properly cite the sources of any information that you use. This means learning the documentation, which many writers find bothersome. Why do I have to do all of this? They ask as they struggle with citations and bibliographies. The answer in that in academics, ideas and information are the primary product. So it's crucial to know whose ideas are whose. That's why plagiarism is such a major offense. It's basically stealing the property of others, so you need to work to avoid plagiarism by documenting your sources correctly. Your essential goal is to make sure the reader of your writing can track down the original source of all information given. To track down the source of all information given. So whatever you put on your works cited page, I'm going to go and look it up. I should be able to track it down. If you don't see a citation, or if I don't see a citation, or if researchers don't see a citation, they will assume that the ideas are yours, that it is your writing. You might as well ask, but why are these things, all these annoying rules for documentation? The rules are there to provide uniform structure so that the reader can look at any citation and quickly understand where the ideas came from. And everyone use their own style of documentation. Putting the publication together for information for whatever information or format they like, it will be much more difficult to track down sources. So a uniform or standard way to look for sources is this documentation style. Okay? Now, that's why various organizations have come up with standard formats for documenting the sources in their paper. So, in the humanities, we use the Modern Language Association. Chicago style is used by various disciplines. The AP style is used by the Associated Press or journalism. The psychological style or American psychological style is used by psych and social sciences. So if you're taking a psychology course or a social science course, most likely you're using APA. And then CBE or CSE is used in the natural sciences. The format you'll use in this course is MLA. Since we'll be using MLA, let's take a look at how this style works. For any information you get from an outside source, MLA requires you to document it in two ways. Right? The in-text citation used when you refer to ideas or words that are not your own, which is the basic information about the source. And then the works cited entry, which is detailed information about the source. Keep in mind your works cited page should start on its own page. It should not be at the last ending of your conclusion. It should be its own page by itself. What do I mean by in-text citations? In-text citations means providing a crucial piece of information immediately after you include the source material in your essay. Your in-text citation goes in parentheses, which is sometimes referred to as parenthetical citation. This is a parenthetical citation. Okay? And a parenthetical citation must provide the author's last name and page number on which the information appears in the original source. So, for example, if you refer to words or ideas from a book written by Barney Gumble, they appear on page 87, which is you see me doing in this first source here. Right? You will include the parenthetical citation, Gumble 87, as you guys have been doing with your last novel, Angelou 22, Angelou 17. After the information, so you'll put the information, as we see here. Some have complained that alcoholism is treated as a humorous topic in popular culture. These are not my words. These are Mr. Gumble's words. So I must put the author's last name and the page number. Okay. Gumble argues that popular culture often treats alcoholism as a joke on page 87. Now notice how there's two different citations here, right? Because I mentioned the author's name at the beginning or the signal phrase, all I have to do is cite the page in which I get the information at the end of the sentence. But because I summarized here what Gumble's conclusion was or what he reached, I need to put the author's last name and page number. But if I start off by the sentence by saying Gumble argues that people need to treat alcoholism as a respectable mental issue, and I got that off page 2, I will put Gumble, say what I just said, and page 2. Note that the punctuation goes after the parenthetical citation, and there is no comma, page, or the letter P with a period between the author's name and the page number. Just the author's name and the page number. Okay. Let's say, for example, you have a poem, right? And take citation from poems. When you cite a poem, you provide the line numbers rather than the page numbers. To make sure the readers know you are citing lines rather than page, the first citation should include the word line or lines, and subsequent citations should just provide the line numbers. If the poem has sections, provide the section number first, followed by a period, then the line number or numbers. This indicates the line break in quotation with slashes, except in block quotations, which we'll go over later. So, for example, if you were citing a poem, which you will cite a poem in your next book that we will read, notice how this author of this essay is citing the poem. The speaker in the poem by Smithers claims to, quote, glow like a nuclear fuel rod slash, which means that we're going into a different section, in the presence of Mr. Burns. And then I just need to put, because I quoted that, where did I get that from? Lines 5 through 6. Notice my period at the end of the citation here. In a later stanza, he exclaims, quote, he blocks the sun, slash, because I'm going to the next section, but grants me light, end quote. Then I have my parenthetical citation, which just the line numbers. Notice I did not mention the word lines because I've already used it here. So all I have to do is use the numbers. The first time you use it, if you're talking about the same poem or the same work, you just have to mention the numbers. When quoting lengthy passages or a block passage from a book, right, you need to set the quote off from your normal text. What do I mean? This implies to more than 1 or 3 lines of prose, more than 1 to 3 lines of poetry, more than 4 lines of prose, and any dialogue from a play, from multiple characters. In such cases, the passage needs to be indented 1.5 inch or just press tab, with the indentation applying to the entire quotation. The indentation serves to indicate that the material is a quotation. So don't use quotation marks at the beginning and end of a passage. Another difference, so let's go here. The quoted passage should be placed in quotation marks unless they are in the original text. So the parenthetical citations go after the end punctuation rather than before it, as practiced for typical quotations. So for passages of poetry, You want to maintain line breaks, punctuation, and capitalization, presenting the quoted passage as it appears in the original text. So if you're quoting something from a poem and words are capitalized, then you want to make sure that you keep the integrity of the author's work, but you will put quotations and marks around it because we would know that this is the integrity of the original work. For dialogue from a play, you just want to put the character's name and indicate who's speaking, presenting them as they appear in the original text. What about works of fiction? As we just, almost, but a longer work or a novel. When you're citing a passage from a short story or novel, you want to provide the page number. If the novels have chapters, add a semicolon immediately after the page number and then a space. Then the chapter number write as CH #, which is for the number, and you'll put the number of the chapter. So, for example, readers are quickly introduced to the protagonist, quote, a barkeeper with a dream and a skin condition, end quote. And then we get the author's name and the page number, period. The period closes the sentence. The citation is a part of the sentence. Keep that in mind. A striking use of metaphor comes in Terwiller's description of life as a series, quote, a series of rakes to the face, end quote. Now here we have a chapter. So it comes from page 76, semicolon, chapter, period 3. End citation and the period. Right? Page 76, chapter 3. Alright, so you want to put the chapter, period, and the number. The # is represented by the number, the chapter number, as we see here. So if this was chapter 2, for example, I would just put chapter 2. Okay? For short stories and novels, right, you want to put the page number, then a semicolon as a space, then the parts of the play from which the cited passage come from, right? So if the play is written in verse, line numbers must be provided as well as the number pages to start the citation and the periods between the parts. So for example, here's a quote from A Street Cart Named Desire, right? In O Street Cart, New Orleans is portrayed as being, quote, stinky, rotten, vomiting, vile, end quote. Now let's look at how the citation looks, right? So the 14, right? The 14 here is the play is written in the line number, right? Line 14. Now, what line, because each act will start renumbering over. So line 14, act 1, comma, scene 1, end citation, and then period. Sophocles had Ishmael lay out a telling view on gender in the Greek culture of the time. All right, so we're going to make a point. So we here made a point, and we're separating that point with a colon, then proof. So most of you guys are seeing in your essays where I say you need evidence, you need proof. This is one way that you can add evidence and proof, right? You make a point, then prove it, set it off with a colon. Quote, we are only women, comma, / represents what? The section. Good, different section. We cannot fight with men, comma, Anigon. End quote. Now we need to say where did this come from. So we know that this is not coming from a chapter, but it's coming from the prologue. So I put prologue, period, lines 46 through 47, end citation, and period. Okay. Clearly, in-text citations alone don't give enough information to track down the original source. If you were given Gumble 87 and asked to find the source, you would have to look on page 87 of every text written by someone by the last name Gumble. Now, we know how hard that is. That's why MLA style also requires a works cited entry. This is very important to your citation. You must have a works cited page. Without a works cited page, you pretty much do not have any references. Okay? The entries on the works cited page gives more detail on each source to make it easy to track them down. So how do you write a works cited entry? In previous versions of MLA style, the answer will be to look up the formula from a particular type of source and plug in the required information. However, the 8th edition takes on a different approach. It tries to establish a more generalized structure or core elements that should be provided so that writers can learn one formula and use it to guide the sources of any type. What do I mean? The core element approach is to look for anything you do not see covered. What do I mean? Well, what are the core elements approach? The author, we must have an author. The title of the container, any other contributors or editors, keep that in mind. What version, if it has a version? Does it have a number? Who's the publisher? What date and the location? Regardless of the type of source, MLA works cited entry should contain many of the core elements as possible so that readers can track down your source easily. You must have some of these core elements. Not all sources will have these core elements, but most of them will. So keep that in mind. You're looking for those core elements so I can find your source. For a source with one author, you want to list the name, first name, last name, first, then a comma, then the first name of the middle initial if given. So for example, I have Hans Moleman. Well, his last name is Moleman, so Moleman, comma, Hans, period. That starts the first core, the author's name. Right? The first two authors of the second author's name should be presented in normal order. So if I have two authors, Hans will go first because he's the first attributed author, but his last name goes, then his first name. Then every other author after that is put in regular order. All right, so Moleman, Hans, and John Fink. Notice that John Fink is not Fink John, but it goes in normal order after the first time that we reverse the last and first name. Now, anytime there are three or more authors, we only list the first author's name followed by et al., which means that there are more to come. So Moleman, Hans, comma, et, al, period. The title of the source, you want to capitalize words in the title other than articles. Now, we know that there are 3 articles in the English language: a, and the. A, and the. We do not capitalize a, and the unless the title starts off with the. Right? Titles of longer works like books, films, plays, long poems, magazines, newspapers, television program, albums, all of that are italicized. Titles of short works or small parts of larger works like a book chapter, a short poem, a magazine or a newspaper article, or even episodes from a television program or even a song are put in quotation marks. So for example, Gone with the Wind is a novel. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a novel. It should be italicized. The Odyssey is a long poem. It should be italicized. The New York Times is a newspaper. It should be italicized. In a Station of the Metro is a short poem. Therefore, it should get quotations. Twist and Shout is a song. Therefore, it should get quotations. The container. If the source is being cited as a part of a larger unit, that container needs to be the name after the title of the source. For example, scholarly articles tend to be published in academic journals, so the journal is the container for the article. What about other contributors? If there are people other than the authors who contribute to the work, such as an editor or a translator, you want to indicate their role by edited by or translated by. For example, Willie Groundskeeper, A View to a Kilt, the autobiography of Groundskeeper's Willie, translated by Seymour Skinner, comma, Highland Books, comma, then the year 2006. If you are focusing on the work of the contributor rather than the author of the source, then you want to list the contributor in the entry followed by a comma and then the contributor's role. For example, if I'm worried about who translated it rather than the author himself, I will put Skinner Seymour, comma, translator. A View to a Kilt, the autobiography of Groundkeeper's Willie, by Groundkeeper's Willie, Highland Books, 2006. The version. If the source is being cited as an edition other than the first or some other distinct version of the original source, then the version needs to be indicated. What do I mean? Well, Twilliger Bob, Woe is I, the third edition. That means that there are 2 editions before the third edition. Now, if you don't put the edition, you're telling me as the person who's going to go and look up your references to look in all 3 editions to find your citation. And that's not fair, right? You need to indicate what edition. The number. If a source or container of the source has a volume or issue numbers, they need to be provided. The volume is not abbreviated. The volume is abbreviated as VOL, and issues are labeled as NO, as number. So, for example, if you got Gumbo Barney, Media Representations of Alcoholism, where does it come from? The Springfield Review. What volume of the Springfield Review? Volume 12, VOL, period 12, number 2, comma, and then you want to put what year? February 1991, and then the pages that you access, pages 37 to 44. This is very important when you're citing the work that you're working with, that you include the page numbers that you're getting from a magazine or a journal, because the review, this means that this is an anthology of other creative works or other articles, right? Just like a journal in a journal base. You go into the database or on Google Scholar and you get something from ProQuest, and then you go into ProQuest. ProQuest just holds all the information. But when you click on that journal article and you notice that it's coming from the Journal of Psychology or the Journal of Adult Education, now that is the magazine, that is the medium. Now, there are many different volumes to that medium. It's not just the first one. That might be volume 38 or volume 39 or even volume 100 and something, right? You must list what volume and what number that comes, the issue number that follows the volume. The other core element is the publisher. If the source has a listed publisher, you want to provide the publisher's name. Random House, right? McGraw-Hill, Simon Schuster's. You want to omit any business identifiers like Inc. for incorporated or company. We don't need that, right? For university presses, we want to abbreviate university as U and press as P. So we will say U of Maryland P, which means University of Maryland Press, or Wake Forest University Press, all right? Or Harvard University Press, or Harvard UP. What about the University of Chicago Press? How would that look? Well, you will put U of Chicago P. Okay. The date. Provide as much information about the date of a source as is offered by the source. For example, 4 dates are provided as day, month, year. Months should be abbreviated according to standard. Jan, Feb, March, April, APR, May as written, June as written, July as written, August, AUG, September, SEPT, October, OCT. Notice that the periods are there. Do not omit these periods. All right? When you abbreviate a word, you must have a period to denote that you've abbreviated this word. For books, provide the publication year. For periodicals or database journals, you want to provide the specific date given by the source. So sometimes if it's published in winter, or if it's published in the summer or December, or if they give you the date 20th of December 2013, again, day, month, year, right? Sometimes the source will just give you a year. Sometimes it'll give you a season, right? Sometimes it'll just give you a month, and then sometimes it'll give you the entire date. For online sources, you want to provide the date that you access the journal. This is very important, right? If the source lists a time for posting or editing, provide that as well. So for example, I went online and I got this article. At the end of my citation, I'm going to put access on the 10th of October, period, 2008, comma, 10 October 2008 at 3:10 p.m. Now this 10 October 2008 at 3:10 p.m., this is the date that the source itself was updated online. This is important in case you're citing information that becomes outdated. I need to know that you got this information at this particular time that it was updated. Location. For sources that have page numbers including journal articles accessed through the electronic database, indicate the page or the pages on which the source appears, followed by the P for page and PP for pages. So one is plural. If you got more than one page, you put in PP. If you just have one page, you put in P. All right. So for example, P page 181 or PP pages period 336 to 339. If the pages which appears are not constructive, provide the first page followed by a plus sign. What do I mean? Well, pages, PP, I read more than page 95, but they're not in any order. It's just stop numbering, right? Then I just put 95 plus. This is the most important part that I'm noticing that a lot of you guys are missing from your sources. You must provide what's known as a DOI number, which is a direct object identifier. When I get this DOI number, I can type this DOI number into the database and pull up the entire articles, right? If there is no DOI number listed, then you just want to provide the URL, but leave off the initial http://. This should not be a part of your citation, right? When you leave off the http://, it removes the hyperlink automatically. You should not have any hyperlinks in your paper, meaning it should not underline blue in your document. If the cited item is an object like a piece of art or a live performance, then just provide the place and the name for that item. Like for example, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. All right. So keep in mind that when you're citing a book, right, you want to put the last name first, all right, then the first name separated by a comma, period, that ends the first container. That's one container. The second container is the title of the book, italicized, period, that ends the second container. Then the publisher, followed by a comma, and then the year of publication. So this is how it will look if this was Barney Gumbel's book. Gumbel, Barney, A Night at Moe's Tavern, Evergreen, 1998. For multiple authors, translators, whatever, refer to the handbook or the Purdue OWL as your online handbook. So you can get the Purdue OWL has every single thing that you can imagine that you want to cite. If it's a tweet, if it's a Facebook post, it's a magazine article, a section from a magazine, you want to know how to cite these things. When you're doing a works cited for a print journal, I also want you to pay attention to how it's hung indent, right? So the first line is flush left, justify left, and then everything under it, you just want to tab it once to give it that hang indent. This lets me know that anything that comes under Gumbel belongs to that reference, right? First container, last name, then the first name separated by a comma. So we got Gumbel Barney. Then we have, since it's an article, it must get quotation marks, right? Keep in mind the period goes inside the quote. Do not put the period outside the quote, right? The title of the article, then italicize the title of the journal, right? Then we put volume, the VOL, the issue or the number, the date, and then the page or the page range. So here's an example. Gumbel Barney, Media Representations of Alcoholism, Springfield Review, Volume 12, Number 2, February 1991, pages 37 to 44. What if you found an article using a database, right? You went to Academic Search Premier or Google Scholar and it led you to Academic Search Premier, right? Well, in this case, it's the same thing after the, you put the same container information as we did before, but afterwards, the pages, that period, you're going to put a period after the pages and put what database you got it from, right? So in this case, I got it from Academic Search Premier. Then I put a comma and put the direct object identifier number or the URL, right? And so I put a comma, then a DOI. So I put a comma here and then the DOI, all lowercase. Notice that it's lowercase. It should not be capital DOI in your paper. It should be lowercase DOI on your works cited page. Then I put the direct object indicator number followed by a period. The last part, which a lot of you guys were missing, especially on your MLA citation exam, was the year and date access. Remember, it's month, date, year. So you must put when did you go online into the database and get it. Accessed 13th April 2016. And then close every citation with a period. Right? Make sure every citation is closed with a period. What about a work in anthology? Like, Mr. Jones, I got this book and I just want to use a chapter. Okay, that's fine. Well, the first container is, again, the author's name separated by the commas, last name first. The title of the work, separated, usable quote, because it's the title of a work. Make sure you have the period inside the quotation. Then you have the title of the anthology italicized. And if the anthology was edited, which most anthologies are edited, you want to have who's edited by the first and last name in regular order. Separated by a comma, and you put the publisher, the year, separated by a comma, and then the pages that you've accessed. So how would that look? Well, Miller author, The Death of a Salesman, and it came from my textbook, Literature and Introduction to Fiction, Poetry, Drama, and Writing. It came from part 3, edited by X.J. Kennedy and Diana Goyle. It's from Pearson, separated with a comma, from 2013. Pages with that P, 2 P's. If it's 1 P, it means just one page. But pages, PP, period, pages 1764 to 1831. Websites, right? It's the same way, right? Only difference is you have to put that URL and the day that you went online and accessed it. All right, so here I have it from Carl Carlson. He was the editor from Nuclear Safety Today in Springfield University, 2010, and then nts.springq.edu is the URL. And then when did you go and get that? I went and got it on 10th October 2015 in every citation with a period. If it's just a work on the website, then you just put the title of the work and then put the website title just like you would with the publisher italicized. The publisher here, who published it, and the date, the URL, and then again, you want to make sure you have your access information. Your access information is very important. When did you access it? In case, for example, you're getting some type of documentation that's outdated, I need to know that. Okay? Your works cited page must go at the end of your essay and start on a separate page. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is its own page. You will type the words works cited at the top and you will center it. It's not italicized, it's not bold, it's not quotation marks, nothing. You do not use references, you do not use bibliography, you do not use sources, you do not use citation. You do not use works cited with an S, works cited SIGHTED, or works SCITED. Make sure you are spelling it correctly. All right, it's works cited. You want to double space the entire page and do not put extra spaces between the entries. You want to indent all lines, entry of the first line, which we talked about, which is the half, the hang indent. And of course, all your sources should be alphabetical. Here's a sample works cited page. Notice how all of this goes under Gumble. This is just one line, so I don't need more from Mr. Hands. But Lisa Simpson gets 3 lines because it went all the way, because I have a DOI number here and I have a date of access. Okay. You want to consult the MLA handbook or MLA documentation for more details. Again, we are using the Purdue OWL. It is the most usable and user-friendly documentation style to show you how to cite these things. This has been week 6, module 6, MLA documentation continued.